Okay, good afternoon, and welcome to our first ever virtual presentation of Club Leadership Education. My name's Greg McDonald. I'm the immediate past governor for the Carolinas, and I'm going to be co-teaching today's session of two modules of CLE, together with Elizabeth Teza, who is our past international trustee and our current leadership development coordinator. There are four important things that we want to answer for you in the this first session, and I put those up on the screen. We're having some issues with the slides. See if we can't get that fixed. While we're working on the slide that'll come up is one that's called references, and you'll see a copy of this leadership guide, which you were all emailed yesterday as one of the principal handouts for the CLE for both modules today. It's your reference book for all of the club officers and club positions in club leadership for the coming year. This is the current version that has been issued by Kiwanis International. You also got in that email a copy of the PowerPoint slides that we're using today, and they were formatted in a note page, 3 slides to a page, with places for you to take notes if you choose to do that. So if you wanted to print that out and use that as your note paper, fine. If not, you can save it as a record of the PowerPoints that we're using this afternoon. So let's get started. The big picture for Kiwanis and the organization and structure that you're all a part of starts with the club. Everything in Kiwanis starts at the club level. There are Kiwanis clubs in over 80 nations around the world, and your club is one of about 7,500 clubs worldwide. Clubs are organized geographically into divisions. A division may have anywhere from as few as 4 clubs to as many as 8 or 10. But it's generally a set of clubs that are within the same immediate geographic area so that they can participate with each other, learn from each other, make visits to each other, and generally contribute to Kiwanis in the immediate county or geographic area. And then divisions are organized into a district. Our district is the Carolinas district. We cover the states of North and South Carolina combined. We have 152 clubs in the Carolinas, stretched across from the mountains to the sea in both states. And of course, the Carolinas district is one of 50 districts in Kiwanis International that's made up of North America, the Asia Pacific region, and Europe. And so you're a part of a much larger organization that is worldwide in scope. Leadership is what we're going to talk about today, and that's the structure that you're a part of. And like everything that I just mentioned, it all starts at the club level. Whether you're a club president, president-elect, or whether you're a club officer, it pretty much all starts with you. As we talk through today in terms of club leadership, there are a lot of things that are aimed at club presidents or president-elects. Those will be taking office in the next next Kiwanis year. But most of what we're saying about governance and about managing the club is applicable to not only all of the officers at the club level, but also the club's board of directors. Your division is headed by a lieutenant governor. Lieutenant governor reports to the governor in the district and is the critical link in the chain between you and your club and the district in terms of giving you access to resources or helping you to ferret out problems that you may have or things that may have come up at the club level. That person is your key communications link with the rest of Kiwanis. And then at the district level, we have our district officers, our district governor, secretary, treasurer, and the governor-elect, who will be governor the following year. And then at Kiwanis International level, you may be aware we've recently just held the council meeting that elected the incoming officers for Kiwanis International for the coming year. And that includes an international president, president-elect, vice president, and the trustees for Kiwanis International. So without going too much further into leadership structure, since we're talking about the Carolinas district and our structure, I'm going to introduce Chris White. Problem with slide again. But Chris is our governor-elect. He'll be taking over as governor of the Carolinas next year. And Chris is going, we've asked him, those of you who are club officers next year will be serving together with Chris. And we've asked Chris to share a few words with you this afternoon about the coming year and what it may look like in the Carolinas district. So we're going to put Chris up on the screen. And I'm going to turn my mic off for a few minutes, and we're going to let Chris have the floor. Chris?
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it. It's great to be with y'all this afternoon. I am Chris White, governor-elect, and depending on how voting goes between now and 5 p.m. today, hopefully I'll become the governor-designate of the Carolinas District tomorrow, and will become governor of the Carolinas District on October 1, the first year of the second century of Kiwanis in the Carolinas. First of all, I want to thank you all and congratulate you on being elected as officers or as board members of your clubs. Congratulations, it's an outstanding achievement. Thank you for serving this year. I hope you will find your service to be meaningful and that you will enjoy your service. And at some point in time down the road, in the not too distant future, I hope you'll consider serving at the Carolinas district level, whether it be a committee member or committee chair, as a lieutenant governor or trustee, or eventually an officer of the Carolinas district, because you are the future of leadership in the Carolinas. As most of you know, this is our centennial year. Kiwanis, like anything else in the Carolinas, has been impacted by COVID-19. And if there's one lesson that we have learned, it's the importance of being able to pivot, of being flexible, of adapting to change. And if we do that, I think that's a great lesson, and it's something that will help your club have an outstanding year this coming year. I hope your CLE experience today will be meaningful to you. Mine was very meaningful to me. I took CLE in Greenville, South Carolina, back in August of 2013. And I was able to make meaningful connections with other people. It's hard to do with Zoom technology, but I hope you'll find this meaningful. And I was able to take something back to our club, just an idea that I learned at CLE, and we started a brand new fundraiser for our club based on something I learned. And it became a very successful fundraiser, and 7 years later, we're still doing it. So I hope by you paying attention today and listening to Greg and listening to Elizabeth, that there'll be things that you can take back to your club to strengthen it. This year's theme for the Carolinas District will be Team Kiwanis, play hard, play smart, play together. It's a tribute to a person whom I admire, the late Dean Smith, the head men's basketball coach at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And it was the philosophy about basketball. It was his philosophy about teamwork and success. If everyone would work together as a team and play hard, play smart, and play together, the wins, the victories, the championships would take care of themselves. And that's what we're going to do together this year at the Carolina District level. I want you to please let me know if I can help you or help your club in any way this year. I'll give you my mobile phone number at the end of my remarks and my email address. but please get in touch with me. If I can help you, if I can appear on Zoom calls for your regular meetings or board meetings or whatever, I'm here to serve you and your clubs. I have just a couple, in a very nutshell version, just a couple of suggestions that I think would make for a successful club year for you as officers, as board members. And that would be this. It goes to vision and it goes to a strategic plan, but establish written goals. And what I'm telling you is based on what I found when I was president of the Kiwanis Club of Raleigh back in 2013, 2014. Establish written goals for membership, for service, and for fundraising. Have committee chairs for all of these areas. That's for accountability. Have your committee chairs recruit members of your club to serve on these committees. That's all about engagement. Have regular meetings with agendas. Again, that's accountability. And I would just ask you to consider change. Just consider trying something new. Trying something new to improve one of your service projects or improve one of your fundraisers. Always be open to the possibility of trying new things. And then if there's one last thing I could give you that I have found on keys to success, I'll give you 3 words. They all begin with C. One is communicate, another is care, and the third is collaborate. Right now we're going through Lieutenant Governor training. We have an outstanding group of incoming lieutenant governors that will be working with your clubs and helping to strengthen your clubs and help you achieve all your goals and dreams. They have identified that they feel the #1 trait of a good leader is communication. And I think the same will hold true not just at the division level, but at your club level, being transparent, communicating among the board members, communicating and being transparent with your members. I think that would give you great success. The second was care. Dean Smith said, when in the issue of leadership, the most important quality of leadership is caring. And so I would challenge you to care about Kiwanis, care about your club, care about all it does, care about its members, and then collaborate. I would ask you to consider maybe looking up on Wikipedia about a company called IDEO. IDEO is a Palo Alto company that has been incredibly successful over the years. And it's really about brainstorming. It's about innovation, but it's about teamwork. And it's about getting diverse members of your team together when you're talking about membership or you're talking about service or fundraising. You can accomplish great things when you get diverse people together and try to solve problems or to try to make solutions. So I would offer that up to you. I hope you have a great year. I look forward to working with you. If you need to reach me, my mobile number is 919-601-5120. That's 919-601-5120. And my email address is clwpalawfirm@gmail.com. I wish you all the best and have a great year. And back to you, Greg.
Thank you, Chris. Chris just stole about a third of the presentation on leadership for the rest of the hour, which is good. We'll make up a little time that way, hopefully. It is all about your job as a leader for the club, and even though there'll be some references that we make to the club president in particular in the next hour and a half, it pretty much applies equally to all of the club officers and all of the board members at the club level. So without further regard, let's get into the nuts and bolts on it. Chris talked a little bit about kind of your role as a club leader. There's really you have a purpose, a role, and a position description that we want to talk about just briefly. Your real purpose is to establish policy and govern the club together with your board of directors. You want to be the person who is providing your club members access to information and access to resources that they don't normally see on a day-to-day basis as a club member. And to do that, you're going to fulfill a number of different roles. It's not just wearing the hat that says president or secretary or board member, but you're going to be the leader and you're going to set precedents within the club. But you're also going to be an educator and a coach and a mentor and an advisor. And that's a lot to pack into a year as president of any given club. There's a full position description in your handout in the club leadership guide. And it takes 3 pages from page 16 through 18 and talks about the position of club president. And I would refer you to those 3 pages, and ask that as you go along, you thumb through and take a look at some of the things that are there. But what it comes down to is a set of duties. And those duties are some of the things that Chris talked about and a few other things that you'll find in that position description. And you'll notice all of these bullets are kind of the one action verb that starts off with those duties. And the duties really are action and actionable items. And right at the top of that list is communication. And what you're communicating is not just you to your club members, but information from Kiwanis International, club and district information, key messages, and things that are important throughout the year. You're evaluating things like club performance, opportunities for improvement. You're a facilitator, and that includes strategic planning for your club. We want you to be a coach, and in coaching, we want you to encourage members of your club to attend leadership education, events like this, events like our club coaching days, things related to membership growth or service growth. And we want you to be the chief celebrator of the club, and celebrating and paying attention and providing recognition to all of the members of your club who have done so much to help pull things together. As I install club officers around the district over the last several years, I try to always mention to the fact that being the leader of a club, particularly a larger or more complex club, but really any club anywhere in Kiwanis, is not a one-person show. It involves pulling together a team of people who are going to be able to work together and then celebrating with that team all that you've accomplished. And we emphasize the importance of communication. And I'll just give you a couple of key things. And the point that George Bernard Shaw made about the single biggest problem with communication being the illusion that it's actually taken place is, I think, critical. And the big thing is today it's generally easy to default into what's the easiest thing to do, which is send a text message to somebody or to send an email. But the whole idea behind effective communication is not only what you communicate, but how you communicate, and doing it in a way that is going to be well received by the people on the other end whose action needs to take place to make something happen. We need to talk about this whole concept of governing the club. And in governing the club, that's not you as the president, and it says president, not dictator, in the title. It's you and your board of directors, and your board and your committee structure, as Chris talked about, are really important parts of the concept of governance in your club. And I'm going to move fairly quickly through a number of slides because we want to get into some leadership issues. But I want to move through some board basics. And let me tell you, these, the next several slides are the highlights or the headlines of information that comes from a very detailed checklist that's prepared by the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits. That's an organization in North Carolina, and there's a companion organization in South Carolina. And the material from both of those organizations about what's expected of a nonprofit is almost identical. Some small variations for state law. But this comes from North Carolina, and it's pretty succinct. And it provides a really good framework for how you and your board should be acting in governing your club and the things that you have actually a legal responsibility for doing as the management of your club. And so I'm going to just highlight it briefly what some of these principles are. There's some that I'll move through pretty quickly. But if you want to get into it in more detail, the district at Carolinas Kiwanis has a subscription to the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits. We're members of that organization, and you can get access to their material if you want it at no charge. What we would ask you to do is just contact Leah Moretz at the district office, and Leah can put you in touch with what you need to do in order to find any of this material from the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits. So let's get into board basics a little bit, and it starts with planning. And the overall idea is to set direction and strategy for fulfilling the mission of your club. And you do that in a number of different ways, regardless of whether you do it as a strategic plan or as just a vision statement or some other piece of planning document. It's the idea of establishing a common shared vision among the club. Governance is a broader set, is the policies and procedures that your board members are going to be involved with. As the leader, you need to ensure that they have an orientation and they have training. And we're going to talk a little bit here in just a few minutes about the importance of succession planning and term limits and things of that sort in terms of how you pass the governance responsibilities around throughout your club. Human resources, people say, well, we're all volunteers and we're all in this together. That's true, but it doesn't stop us from needing to have the kinds of protections in place that allow people to know and understand what their job is, and that's position descriptions. But we also have a whole set of guidelines, some that come down from Kiwanis International in terms of our youth protection guidelines, some that involve common sense things like avoiding conflicts of interest and having specific policies for that, some that involve things that are established in state law or federal tax law about retaining records consistent with what the law is or best practices. Financial management is a big one within Kiwanis. We are a nonprofit organization. We collect money from the general public to be used for charitable works. We have a responsibility called a fiduciary responsibility to the donors of that money to spend that money in a responsible way. And as an organization, we have a responsibility to make sure that we maintain accountability. And one of the things when we get into committee structure that is a requirement is for all Kiwanis clubs to have either an independent financial review committee internally or to have an external audit. And depending on the size of your club, you most likely will have the internal review, financial review committee. But that's a part of complying with the laws and regulations. In certain states, North Carolina being one of them, you also have some additional regulations about sales tax, and there's a charitable solicitation license in North Carolina that you may or may not have to have depending on the size of your club and the way you solicit funds from the public. So you need to be aware of those and to look into those things. And we can cover some of those in a little more detail in other sessions. Fundraising, we need to make sure that we're ethical in what we do and to present accurate information about the intended use of the funds, and then to use those funds in the ways in which they were intended and what we communicate to our donors about that money. We are more and more into information technology. All of the things that we're using right now with the Zoom technology, but also all of the information that we gather and use and retain. And we're having more and more issues that we're having to deal with about having protecting the information that we have, even if it's just privacy information about our individual members, or if we're collecting information that we have to about some of our youth that we serve, and preventing unauthorized disclosure. And so those things become a major issue for us, and an issue that your boards of directors are going to have to deal with. Evaluating results means measuring performance, not measuring things that happen, but measuring what those things do, and the results, the evaluation of are we having an impact within our community? And then sharing that evaluation publicly with your donors and your stakeholders and the people within your community that you're trying to help. Strategic alliances is another way of saying partnerships. Kiwanis has been pushing very heavily in recent years for more coordination with other similar service organizations, also with forming alliances locally that can help you do what you want to do as a club. One of the biggest things that you can do is to form local alliances with other organizations that can help you get the service projects that you have done and help you expand the scope of what you do to help the children and the rest of your community. And so establishing those alliances is a way of expanding your membership or expanding the reach of your membership. But establishing clear expectations for those alliances up front is an important part of success. Civic engagement is nothing more than saying you need to be a part of the community, and you need to educate your community about the issues that are involved with children and children in your community and the thing that you're doing. And of course, it goes without saying, as a nonprofit organization, we want to avoid any appearance of partisanship or lobbying because we're a nonprofit organization. And transparency and accountability. And from my perspective, transparency and accountability is probably one of the most important aspects of working in a nonprofit. We have, as nonprofits, an ethical obligation to conduct all of our activities in a way that is accountable and that is transparent to the public that we serve. We should always adhere to the highest professional standards, and we should be making sure that everyone is aware of what we are doing, where our money comes from, where is it going, and what things is it supporting, and what kind of results we're getting as a byproduct of the work that we're doing. And finally, I want to mention risk management. Risk management has become exceedingly important in Kiwanis over the years and is increasing in importance every day, particularly as it applies to our liability insurance and our youth protection guidelines. You're going to hear more about that in the second session this afternoon when Elizabeth goes through our service leadership programs with you and talks about youth protection guidelines. So I'll leave it for later this afternoon, but risk management is more than just insurance and more than just youth protection. It's assessing all of the risks that could potentially arise to damage the club or its reputation. And we need to think of it in terms of its reputation as part of risk management and protecting that reputation as well. I know that's a lot to absorb. There's 11 major points in there. There are is a lot of other information available to help you understand those points. But in terms of talking about governance and your role with your board of directors and what that board is going to do to help you out, that covers the highlights. And it's more than just using your board of directors as an entity to pass a budget. It's about using your board of directors to effectively help you govern the club in your coming year. You also have a committee structure, and you'll have clubs, even some very small clubs that have very elaborate committee structures and some that have fairly simple ones. The committee structure that Kiwanis International tends to see as pretty much across the board is highlighted on page 19 in your leadership guide under committees. But it's interesting, it's up to you and your club as to what committees your club needs based on what it needs to do. There are really just two committees that I would tell you that you pretty much must have. The one that is absolutely essential, that is specified by Kiwanis for all clubs, is that financial review committee. Unless you have an outside audit, a financial review committee is mandatory, and that's established in your club bylaws. The second essential committee, in my mind, is membership, and I think every club should have a membership committee. It should be a committee, not just a person, and it needs to be a functioning committee that's involved not just with recruiting new members, but with membership retention and the health and well-being of your entire membership. We would also suggest that you may find a need for a service committee, a public relations committee, a separate fundraising committee, and those things are all outlined within those pages on page 19 and 20 in your leadership guide. There are several important events that the club president really needs to ensure take place throughout the year. Again, the leadership guide talks about them, and that's what the page references are on the slide. But probably the most important in terms of setting the tone for the year is what the leadership guide refers to as the club president's planning conference. Now, you can also call that a board retreat, but essentially it's a meeting that the club officers and the board members pull together at the beginning of each Kiwanis year to review what their budget is for the coming year, to look at what the programs are, to approve the service projects for the club, to plan new initiatives and new things that need to go. It sets the tone for the entire year, and there's an outline for helping to plan that meeting and that conference, that club president's planning conference. And it's an important activity that should take place in every club, regardless of what the size of the club is. And then obviously you have your board meetings and the annual election of officers, and then a number of other events that take place throughout the year. We're going to shift gears. We've talked about board use and governance for about the last 20 minutes, and we've covered a lot of ground. I want to show you a videotape. We've cut it down. It's going to run about 15 minutes, so when we get to the end of it, we'll have a couple more minutes of closing some things off before we take a break and then go to the second module that we're going to cover today. But I'm going to show a video that is, some of you may have seen. It's been around since 2014. It's Navy Admiral William McRaven, who was the commander of Special Operations Command when he was on active duty in the Navy. He's a Navy SEAL for 36 years, but he was a graduate of the University of Texas at Austin, and he came back in 2014 to deliver the commencement address. And this is a tape of his delivery of that commencement address. And it's one of the best leadership videos that I think I've seen in probably a decade. And he speaks very eloquently about the things that are necessary if you want to change the world. And I think it gives us some food for thought. I'm going to ask you to listen to Admiral McRaven, and then we'll come back at the end of that video and talk a little bit more about some of the leadership and engagement of your members before I turn it over to Elizabeth to cover service leadership programs for the rest of the afternoon. So with that, let's listen to Admiral McRaven.
So the university's slogan is, what starts here changes the world. Well, I've got to admit, I kind of like it. What starts here changes the world. Tonight, there are almost 8,000 students, or there are more than 8,000 students graduated from UT. So that great paragon of analytical rigor, Ask.com, says that the average American will meet 10,000 people in their lifetime. 10,000 people, that's a lot of folks. But if every one of you changed the lives of just 10 people, and each one of those people changed the lives of another 10 people, and another 10, then in 5 generations, 125 years, the class of 2014 will have changed the lives of 800 million people. 800 million people. If you think it's hard to change the lives of 10 people, change their lives forever, you're wrong. I saw it happen every day in Iraq and Afghanistan. A young Army officer makes a decision to go left instead of right down a road in Baghdad, and the 10 soldiers with him are saved from a close-in ambush. In Kandahar province, Afghanistan, a non-commissioned officer from the female engagement team senses that something isn't right and directs the infantry platoon away from a 500-pound IED, saving the lives of a dozen soldiers. But if you think about it, not only were those soldiers saved by the decisions of one person, but their children were saved, and their children's children. Generations were saved by one decision, one person. But changing the world can happen anywhere, and anyone can do it. So what starts here can indeed change the world. But the question is, what will the world look like after you change it? Well, I'm confident that it will look much, much better. But if you'll humor this old sailor for just a moment, I have a few suggestions that may help you on your way to a better world. And while these lessons were learned during my time in the military, I can assure you that it matters not whether you ever served a day in uniform. It matters not your gender, your ethnic or religious background, your orientation, or your social status. Our struggles in this world are similar, and the lessons to overcome those struggles and to move forward, changing ourselves and changing the world around us, will apply equally to all. So here are the 10 lessons I learned from basic SEAL training that hopefully will be of value to you as you move forward in life. Every morning in SEAL training, my instructors, who at the time were all Vietnam veterans, would show up in my barracks room, and the first thing they'd do was inspect my bed. If you did it right, the corners would be square, the covers would be pulled tight, the pillow centered just under the headboard, and the extra blanket folded neatly at the foot of the rack. It was a simple task, mundane at best, but every morning we were required to make our bed to perfection. It seemed a little ridiculous at the time, particularly in light of the fact that we were aspiring to be real warriors, tough, battle-hardened SEALs. But the wisdom of this simple act has been proven to me many times over. If you make your bed every morning, you will have accomplished the first task of the day. It will give you a small sense of pride, and it will encourage you to do another task, and another, and another. And by the end of the day, that one task completed will have turned into many tasks completed. Making your bed will also reinforce the fact that the little things in life matter. If you can't do the little things right, you'll never be able to do the big things right. And if by chance you have a miserable day, you will come home to a bed that is made, that you made. And a made bed gives you encouragement that tomorrow will be better. So if you want to change the world, start off by making your bed. During SEAL training, the students are all broken down into boat crews. Each crew is 7 students. 3 on each side of a small rubber boat, and 1 coxswain to help guide the dinghy. Every day your boat crew forms up on the beach and is instructed to get through the surf zone and paddle several miles down the coast. In the winter, the surf off San Diego can get to be 8 to 10 feet high, and it is exceedingly difficult to paddle through the plunging surf unless everyone digs in. Every paddle must be synchronized to the stroke count of the coxswain. Everyone must exert equal effort, or the boat will turn against the wave and be unceremoniously dumped back on the beach. For the boat to make it to its destination, everyone must paddle. You can't change the world alone. You will need some help. And to truly get from your starting point to your destination takes friends, colleagues, the goodwill of strangers, and a strong coxswain to guide you. If you want to change the world, find someone to help you paddle. I was in the boat with the tall guys, but the best boat crew we had was made up of the little guys, the Munchkin crew, we called them. No one was over 5'5". The big men in the other boat crews would always make good-natured fun of the tiny little flippers the Munchkins put on their tiny little feet prior to every swim. But somehow these little guys from every corner of the nation and the world always had the last laugh, swimming faster than everyone and reaching the shore long before the rest of us. SEAL training was a great equalizer. Nothing mattered but your will to succeed, not your color, not your ethnic background, not your education, not your social status. If you want to change the world, measure a person by the size of their heart, not by the size of their flippers. Several times a week, the instructors would line up the class and do a uniform inspection. It was exceptionally thorough. Your hat had to be perfectly starched, your uniform immaculately pressed, your belt buckle shiny and void of any smudges. But it seemed that no matter how much effort you put into starching your hat or pressing your uniform or polishing your belt buckle, it just wasn't good enough. The instructors would find something wrong. For failing the uniform inspection, the student had to run, fully clothed, into the surf zone, then wet from head to toe, roll around on the beach until every part of your body was covered with sand. The effect was known as a sugar cookie. You stayed in the uniform the rest of the day, cold, wet, and sandy. There were many a student who just couldn't accept the fact that all their efforts were in vain, that no matter how hard they tried to get the uniform right, it went unappreciated. Those students didn't make it through training. Those students didn't understand the purpose of the drill. You were never going to succeed. You were never going to have a perfect uniform. The instructors weren't going to allow it. Sometimes, no matter how well you prepare or how well you perform, you still end up as a sugar cookie. It's just the way life is sometimes. If you want to change the world, get over being a sugar cookie and keep moving forward. Every day during training, you were challenged with multiple physical events: long runs, long swims, obstacle courses, hours of calisthenics, something designed to test your mettle. Every event had standards, times you had to meet. If you failed to meet those times, those standards, your name was posted on a list, and at the end of the day, those on the list were invited to a circus. A circus was 2 hours of additional calisthenics, designed to wear you down, to break your spirit, to force you to quit. No one wanted a circus. A circus meant that for that day, you didn't measure up. A circus meant more fatigue, and more fatigue meant that the following day would be more difficult, and more circuses were likely. But at some time during SEAL training, everyone made the circus list. But an interesting thing happened to those who were constantly on the list. Over time, those students who did 2 hours of extra calisthenics got stronger and stronger. The pain of the circuses built inner strength and physical resiliency. Life is filled with circuses. You will fail. You will likely fail often. It will be painful. It will be discouraging. At times, it will test you to your very core. But if you want to change the world, don't be afraid of the circuses. During the land warfare phase of training, the students are flown out to San Clemente Island, which lies off the coast of San Diego. The waters off San Clemente are a breeding ground for the great white sharks. To pass SEAL training, there are a series of long swims that must be completed. One is the night swim. Before the swim, the instructors joyfully brief the students on all the species of sharks that inhabit the waters off San Clemente. They assure you, however, that no student has ever been eaten by a shark, at least not that they can remember. But you are also taught that if a shark begins to circle your position, stand your ground. Do not swim away. Do not act afraid. And if the shark, hungry for a midnight snack, darts towards you, then summons up all your strength and punch him in the snout, and he will turn and swim away. There are a lot of sharks in the world. If you hope to complete the swim, you will have to deal with them. So if you want to change the world, don't back down from the sharks. As Navy SEALs, one of our jobs is to conduct underwater attacks against enemy shipping. We practice this technique extensively during training. The ship attack mission is where a pair of SEAL divers is dropped off outside an enemy harbor and then swims well over 2 miles underwater, using nothing but a depth gauge and a compass to get to the target. During the entire swim, even well below the surface, there is some light that comes through. It is comforting to know that there is open water above you. But as you approach the ship, which is tied to a pier, the light begins to fade. The steel structure of the ship blocks the moonlight. It blocks the surrounding street lamps. It blocks all ambient light. To be successful in your mission, you have to swim under the ship and find the keel, the center line, and the deepest part of the ship. This is your objective. But the keel is also the darkest part of the ship, where you cannot see your hand in front of your face, where the noise from the ship's machinery is deafening, and where it gets to be easily disoriented, and you can fail. Every SEAL knows that under the keel, at that darkest moment of the mission, is a time when you need to be calm, when you must be calm, when you must be composed, when all your tactical skills, your physical power, and your inner strength must be brought to bear. If you want to change the world, you must be your very best in the darkest moments. The 9th week of training is referred to as Hell Week. It is 6 days of no sleep, constant physical and mental harassment, and one special day at the Mud Flats. The Mud Flats are an area between San Diego and Tijuana where the water runs off and creates the Tijuana Sloughs, a swampy patch of terrain where the mud will engulf you. It is on Wednesday of Hell Week that you paddle down to the Mud Flats and spend the next 15 hours trying to survive this freezing cold, the howling wind, and the incessant pressure to quit from the instructors. As the sun began to set that Wednesday evening, my training class, having committed some egregious infraction of the rules, was ordered into the mud. The mud consumed each man till there was nothing visible but our heads. The instructors told us we could leave the mud if only 5 men would quit. Only 5 men, just 5 men, and we could get out of the oppressive cold. Looking around the mud flat, it was apparent that some students were about to give up. It was still over 8 hours till the sun came up, 8 more hours of bone-chilling cold. The chattering teeth and the shivering moans of the trainees were so loud, it was hard to hear anything. And then one voice began to echo through the night. One voice raised in song. The song was terribly out of tune, but sung with great enthusiasm. One voice became 2, and 2 became 3, and before long, everyone in the class was singing. The instructors threatened us with more time in the mud if we kept up the singing, but the singing persisted. And somehow the mud seemed a little warmer, and the wind a little tamer, and the dawn not so far away. If I have learned anything in my time traveling the world, it is the power of hope. The power of one person, a Washington, a Lincoln, King, Mandela, and even a young girl from Pakistan, Malala. One person can change the world by giving people hope. So if you want to change the world, start singing when you're up to your neck in mud. Finally, in SEAL training, there's a bell. A brass bell that hangs in the center of the compound for all the students to see. All you have to do to quit is ring the bell. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to wake up at 5 o'clock. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to be in the freezing cold swims. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to do the runs, the obstacle course, the PT, and you no longer have to endure the hardships of training. All you have to do is ring the bell to get out. If you want to change the world, don't ever, ever ring the bell. Start each day with a task completed. Find someone to help you through life. Respect everyone. Know that life is not fair and that you will fail often. But if you take some risks, step up when the times are the toughest, face down the bullies, lift up the downtrodden, and never, ever give up. If you do these things, the next generation and the generations that follow will live in a world far better than the one we have today.
I like that video. It says a lot to a lot of different people about a lot of things that have to do with what Kiwanis is all about in terms of changing or improving the world one child, one community at a time. So what's next? We're going to tomorrow as one of the forum sessions that we do that is a part of CLE, the 2 forum sessions tomorrow afternoon. We're going to talk about vision and planning. So I'm not going to say much about that right now, but next, really, you will have taken your first step, and now you really need a plan. As a club leader, as a board, you need to put it all together. You need to find the pieces and take those pieces and put them into a plan of action of something that's going to guide you through your year. I would tell you the one thing that I'll do about mentioning about planning today, and we'll talk about it in more depth tomorrow, is there are really 5 things that contribute to a successful Kiwanis club. The first is having the club perform relevant hands-on service. Hands-on service is the thing that sets Kiwanis apart from all other service organizations. You need to have fun. You need to engage in best management practices. The public in your community needs to know who you are and what your mission is and what you're contributing to that mission in that community. And you need to be a part of the broader Kiwanis family. And we're going to talk in just a few minutes about that broader Kiwanis family when Elizabeth comes in to share with us. So what I would tell you is, as you put your plans together, focus on those 5 elements of successful Kiwanis clubs and put together a plan that does those things. We're running a couple of minutes late, but I want to mention very briefly, and I'll click through these slides quickly, the concept of succession planning. You have not even taken office yet, but you should be about the business right now of identifying your successor. You want to do this because it ensures the long-term health, growth, and stability of your club. You want to identify people who can be leaders in the club for the future, and you need to provide them with training and orientation and not just throw them into the deep end of the pool. There's this very small pool of people out there who are willing to step forward and lead, and developing them is a part of your leadership responsibility. You need to look for developmental opportunities for people. You need to coach them, mentor them, provide them feedback, and provide them with formal training wherever possible. And then finally, you need to develop a leadership culture within your club. You don't want to continue to have the same people repeat over and over and over again in club leadership positions. You need to provide specific orientation and training to those folks. Chris is fond of leaving people with quotes, so I'll leave you with this one. Coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, and working together is success. And that comes from Henry Ford. At the back of your resource guide, your leadership guide, is a whole list of resources, several pages of it, that are accessible to you online through Kiwanis International. I would refer you to that list. Just about anything you may want to have, you can find at that point. And those resources are important for you in terms of your job and the things that you need to do. You're not in this alone. There are a lot of places you can go for help. You can go to the district office. You can call on any of your district officers. You can call on any of the people who've held that job before you, past presidents of your club and other clubs, and you can call on the other clubs that are within your division. So the big thing is seek out the resources that you need to succeed in your year as a club officer or as a club president. If we have any open questions or unanswered questions at this point, this is a good point to address them. If you happen to think of them later, you can continue to add them into the Q&A and we'll try and deal with them.